Thresher's Paradise is a 3D roguelike first-person shooter that rewards the player by their skill. The player will go through multiple futuristic arena levels, defeating enemies and bosses in order to claim their fame. The reason I chose this game to be a roguelike is to give it the replayability and excitement of a game that you can play over and over again and always have a different experience. The style rating rates the player on a D through S scale based on how well the player performs in each level. The effects of these ratings will give the player a boost to their stats, with S having the highest boost and D having the lowest. Some examples of how the style rating would be calculated include hitting the enemy consistently, headshots, dodging out of the way of the enemy, and killing multiple enemies. If the player takes damage, then the style rating will be set to 0 and they'll have to start again. The goal is to make the player feel awesome while playing the game while providing incentive to do well in each level. The player is a Thresher, someone who goes into the tower to earn fame and will be given abilities that they can use in each level. First, dodging. Dodging allows the player to dash out of the way of enemies or get closer to the enemy for a quick kill. Double jump. Double jumping gives the player some extra maneuverability while playing the game and gives the player an advantage over ground enemies. The player will also have stats that will be affected by items that the player can pick up. The stats are damage, movement speed, and accuracy. The player can also loot chests, which will contain items that will power up the player. The player will be given starting pistol when playing the first level and will gain new weapon types throughout each level. These weapon types will have stats similar to the player, and those weapon stats are damage, firing speed, and clip size. These stats will be random and scaled based on player progression. The 3 weapon types are pistols, shotguns, and assault rifles. These will be dropped by enemies or found in chests. There are a total of 6 unique items that the player will give the player a passive ability, and 10 randomly dropped items that give a permanent stat boost. The player can only obtain unique items from chests, but can find the random items found in chests or dropped by enemies. For example, as a unique item effect, the player gains an aura of damage around them. There will be 3 different level layouts, each with their own unique environments. The player will fight through waves of enemies before fighting the final boss of that level. After defeating the boss, 2 unique items will appear in the level, and the player can take only one of those 2 items. The goal of the player is to defeat the CEO of the tower, which is the final boss. There will be 3 unique bosses, each with their own unique patterns that the player can learn. The first will be the weakest, with the second boss being moderately stronger, and the final boss being the CEO and the strongest of the tower. There are 5 different enemy types that the player will fight, which are melee, flying, shotgun, assault rifle, and pistol enemies. The mechanics of the game give the player many split-second decisions that they can make during and after each level. As an example, the player has defeated the boss, and there are 2 unique items that the player can choose from. One is an item that gives the player an aura of damage, and one is that allows the player to fire a second bullet. If the player can get close to enemies and has enough health, then they might choose the aura, but if not, they might go for the second item. A Thresher's Paradise takes place in a futuristic dystopian society where Threshers fight through a tower for fame and glory. The game will be in first-person perspective to give the player a sense of scale and immersion. This game is like and can be described as Devil May Cry 5 meets bullets per minute. Devil May Cry 5 gives the player a style rating based on combos, however it's mainly story-based with different thematic elements. Bullets per minute is an FPS and a roguelike, but rates the player on how well they play to the music. Thresher's Paradise subtracts both these elements and creates a simpler idea. There are 2 major risks for this idea. First, the enemy AI. The enemy AI will be difficult to code, as we will need them to navigate around objects, detect the player, and fire at the player based on whether they can see them or not. The second risk is the style rating. There are multiple variables that will be considered when determining the style rating of the player and will need frequent testing. A way to mitigate these risks is to develop the enemy AI and style rating as early as possible.